Today's video is aimed at founders who are frustrated with their development team. There are a number of things that can go wrong with a software project, so let's start with some higher level categories. The first is executional problems, where the team is missing deadlines or delivering low quality work. There are a lot of things that could be going on there, and we'll break that down in a moment. The second type of problem is relationship issues and a deterioration of trust between you and the team. I'll go over some blind spots for both founders and engineering teams and see if we can get to the end of this video with a clearer idea of what you might be struggling with. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, first, executional problems. Let's think of your app as a tower of blocks building towards a target in the sky. Each block is a piece of engineering work that your engineers need to build to reach that goal. So let's talk about how productivity changes over the course of building this tower. When we first start laying those initial functions and features of the app, the complexity on how to place these blocks tends to be trivial. There's not much for this code to interact with, so reasoning about it is easy. As we add blocks to the tower, that complexity increases. The blocks and their positioning increasingly depends on the robustness and the positioning of the blocks underneath. And that means that the same quantity of software tends to be delivered slower in mature projects compared to when the projects start, because the more complex the system, the harder it is to reason about it and the longer it takes to change it safely. Here's how this looks on a graph. You can see at the beginning we have stable high productivity during that period when we're just laying our foundation and it's easy to reason about the work. Then velocity gradually drops as the complexity of adding code increases. Eventually, the project should reach a point where making changes is always round about the same level of complexity and output stabilizes. The level that it stabilizes at depends on how thoughtful your development team has been about their software architecture. This can be a blind spot for founders, and it can feel like the work is slowing down, and it can be hard to understand why. If your apps team hasn't done a great job of setting expectations, if progress is slowing, what you need to assess is whether output is stabilizing at a healthy level, given the complexity of the work, or if your team is simply out of their depth and their net productivity is unacceptable. To figure that out, let's come back to our tower. We're aiming for the target's in the clouds, we're not on track to hit it. What's happening? Possibility 1, you built too fast. Maybe your team didn't lay foundation well early on, and they're just using a minimum number of blocks to get as high as they can as quickly as possible. This feels good early on to everyone, but the poor foundation ultimately limits how high you can build. If your team hit or beat their early milestones, and now they're consistently missing their later ones, that can be a sign that this is happening, especially if the level of experience on the team is low. Or it could be happening because expectations weren't set right early on. The development team underestimated the work, so now they're rushing to finish on time and on budget. An app that's rushed early on can become a money pit later because the whole thing has become fragile. Changes to the foundational early work affect everything up the tower, and this can turn into whack-a-mole for bugs. It can manifest as every time you change something, 3 things break. There's a decent chance that the rushed work will just have to be thrown out and rebuilt. If you're in this situation, the best thing to do is find somebody that you trust and get them access to the code. An experienced engineer should be able to take a look at the project and get a sense of what shortcuts are being taken or where your apps team might be overcomplicating the work and getting bogged down in that complexity. If that second opinion comes back fairly positive, then it could just be that you're on the downslope of that productivity curve. Possibility 2, poorly communicated target. Another possibility is that your target isn't well understood. If you aren't building in the right direction and need to course correct, there's a cost to that, and that can manifest as slower progress or a buggier app. Or it could be that your priorities are poorly understood. How confident are you that everyone in your team understands not just what they're building, but why they're building it and who they're building it for? These sorts of problems are more likely to happen with offshore teams where cultural values and communication styles differ. Your job as a founder is to clearly communicate the business goals of the work, and it's your app team's job to go and translate those business goals into actionable tasks for the team. It's not enough to just describe the app that you want. Your team should understand clearly who the users are and why you're building for those people. Some companies create fictional users with names and backstories, but regardless of how you do it, try to make sure that your team really gets who they're building this for and why. Possibility 3, poor cross-team communication. Another thing to watch out for is how your different subteams are making decisions. If your back-end web and apps teams are communicating poorly with each other, that might lead to one team making changes that have a high impact on another team's work. For example, your back-end team might decide to change how a customer is represented in the database, which might be trivial on their end, but lead to substantial changes throughout your apps. Having one person responsible for overall technical efficiency across the teams, whether that's a CTO or a technical project manager, can really help mitigate those problems. Possibility 4, bad early decisions. Sometimes your early choices of technology limit your ability to progress. This can be a really frustrating scenario if you've made a bold technical commitment like a hybrid framework, and it's often difficult to recover from. Try to make sure that the technologies used have been around for a while and they're being chosen for more than just their shiny newness, and make sure that they're widely used with apps that you would be proud to call your own. Again, having someone that you trust to be the technical liaison between the business goals and the technical team is really important here. Okay, things aren't going well, you're frustrated, you've decided something needs to change. Your big decision is going to be whether or not to keep your existing team. Switching teams is expensive because software projects are complex, and it takes a long time before a new team is ramped up on the code base, often weeks or months. And this means 2 things. 1, try to keep your team if you think they're capable of the work and still motivated. And 2, try not to burn bridges if you do change teams. It's so much easier for the incoming team if they can ask the original engineers how things work. You're going to save money and time if you hold on to that relationship. In the code base the new team inherits, they need to put everything into 4 buckets. What works well, what remains to be done, what needs to be thrown out, and what can be lived with for now. Because understanding someone else's code is time-consuming and just less fun than building new things, engineering teams tend to have a bias towards throwing work out before they understand it. And that's obviously wasteful. So during the transition, it's important that you let the new team evaluate and understand the work done so far. If you've preserved that relationship with the original team, one approach here is to have the new team assess the state of the project, prepare a plan for what needs to get done, and then hold a meeting with both teams, with the original team and the new team on the same call. Because the original team has an incentive to defend that existing work, and that can counterbalance that tendency to rebuild things that are hard to understand. That tension between the old team and the new team is a useful tool for figuring out what truly needs to get done, and that's why it's so useful to preserve that relationship. Okay, if you've come this far, then you're probably in this situation, and I'm sorry if that's the case. It's not a fun place to be. But you're welcome to reach out to me, and good luck figuring it all out. One final possibility of what could be going wrong with your blocks is that somebody put a crib and danced a little bunny all over your blocks and interrupted your videos when you're trying to make your videos. That's a strong risk, and it's happened in multiple projects that I've been part of.